Folks, are you ready to get your learn on? Well, get ready. Another episode of Real Talk coming to you. This time we're going to talk about Singapore. This time, Singapore is a topic because one of my viewers requested, and it's for you, whoever you are. Okay, Singapore. Well, you can't talk about Singapore without talking about Southeast Asia and the history of this region. So if you're familiar with this region since post-colonial period till now, then you can skip this part of the video and just go to that part where you're not familiar. But if you're not, let me give you a 3-minute brief rundown how we got here today. Okay, World War II. Europeans decided to kill each other, and they basically bankrupt each other. They took each other out of the power position globally, right? And that ushered in the American era. So what happened was that Malaysia was a very profitable region of the British colony, right? And British did a lot of good things here. They developed rubber tin industry, which was very profitable back in those days. Infrastructure in order to transport all the good in and out of the regions. There was a lot of good trade going on. Also, because of the situation that Malaysia's in, if you look on the world map, there's a thing called the Malacca Strait, right? Even back in those days, Malacca Strait is a very valuable piece. It's like Suez Canal. It's like Panama Canal. Everything flows through this. From China, Japan, Korea, down to the west, back, right? So because the natural resource, because of the geographical position, the whole Malay area, which really back in the days encompassed Malaysia, what we know today, Singapore, and maybe even parts of Indonesia. I'm not that sure about that part. But it's very, very wealthy and fairly good governed. But British, even though British won the world wars, they lost pretty much everything else. Self-respect, power, military, money, everything. So they can no longer control this part of the world. And as a result, they, what we call the colonial system started crumbling, right? And people in this region sense that they no longer want to pay for their overlords and basically a British tax. All right, they want to control their own destiny. So the back in the days, the West Malaysia, the East Malaysia, or other way around, and Singapore in the middle, got together and just say, you know what, let's get together so we can build a strong state, and go negotiate with the British for independence. British did some math. Okay, cost benefits. It's better to trade with these guys versus keep trying to, control them, which they will resist and which will have some military power, which costs a lot of money. Let's just trade with them. Okay, fine, independence, there you go. Got it, buddy. Now, let's do business. Everyone keeps goodwill. Everyone's happy. Even today, if you look at Singapore, Malaysian legal system, banking system, and political, administrative systems, it's basically a brainchild of the British system, or the clone of a British system, right? So that brought us to quickly after pro-independence. After independence, there was great joy. Wow, we got our lands back. Except, like all power transitions, when the former dominant power leaves, it creates a vacuum. And the new power that came to form to control the government will fight among itself. You see this happen in every power transition, whether it's French Revolution, whether it's in Germany, Russia, China, Cuba even. There's what we call political cleansing, right? That's what we call basically people fight inside their own party or power to see who gets to control the government, who has real power. And very quickly, after a couple of election cycles here in Malaysia, the Malay leaders realized that there's real danger that Chinese will eventually control the entire Malaysia. West Malaysia, East Malaysia. East Malaysia is basically Borneo Island, right? You have the Sabah, Sarawak, and this independent country called Brunei that didn't want to be part of Malay Federation, and Singapore. So these are the back in the day. Because why? Democracy is all about numbers and money, of course. And the Chinese population back then was almost as much as Malays, and the Chinese controlled the money of the country, the commerce of the country, and the Chinese control majority of the cities like KL, Penang, Johor, Singapore, all Chinese dominated, right? You go to these cities, it's all, you got to do business with Chinese. So the Malay leadership, in their wisdom, I don't think it's wisdom, because they kind of screwed themselves too, but decide power is more important than money. Very smart in that sense. And decided to kick Singapore out. Right, they did a referendum or whatever, and they had a finagling. If you want to go on YouTube, you'll see a video of, you can search Lee Kuan Yew, crying in black and white that Singapore was kicked out of the Malaysia Federation. So if you can imagine, Malaysia Federation is like today's EU, European Union, right? It's loosely held together by verbal and legal agreements and understandings. But I think that, to be fair, Lee Kuan Yew was no innocent party. He was very ambitious. I think that if he was a little bit patient and let what was the leader? Tun Razak? No, Tun Ku? Dr. Rahman? Yeah. Dr. Rahman probably would have passed the power to Lee Kuan Yew anyway, because Lee Kuan Yew was the most fitted to govern. But Lee Kuan Yew, being a young, brash young man, didn't want to wait. He wanted to take power from the Malay leadership. And he wasn't patient, right? He should have waited. And if he should have waited, then today Singapore will probably still be part of Malaysia. And, Singapore will be much more powerful. Malaysia will be much better off. Everyone will be better off. But that's not how the card fall. What is that expression? That's not how the... Oh God, I've been living in Asia too long. I forgot my English expressions. Anyway, that's not how things worked out, because Lee Kuan Yew was too ambitious, right? So he was challenging the existing Malaysian power. So Malaysians said, you know what? Leave. We don't want you to be part of this club. And Singapore, as a result, became an independent state. But let's be honest, Malay people, not very good at governing. They really don't know. They never really governed, right? Not in the modern city-state type, not modern nation type format. They had kingdoms, but they never had nations. And govern nations is very different from govern kingdoms. That's a very long video. I can't talk about that in this video. It's too long. But Chinese have governed better. And as you see, Singapore being one example, there are a lot of other examples around the world. But Singapore got its freedom and got its right to self-determination. Woohoo! And then, of course, next 50 years, and today Singapore is where it is, Malaysia is where it is, no accident, okay? So let's talk about the future. This is where, okay guys, if you know about this part of the world history and you know about this region, this is where you start paying attention to me, okay? So what do I think about Singapore and Singapore's future? I actually believe that Singapore's political future, if not economic future, is not that rosy. Two reasons. One, political risk. So Singapore is, I know most Westerners like, oh, Singapore, democracy. No, dumb. Every country that's friendly to the West is democratic. Every country that's not friendly to the West is dictatorial or despotic or communist, right? Actually, it's not. Let me break it to you. You ignorant white folks, that Singapore is run by the Lee family. Started with Lee Kuan Yew and went to his son. What's his son's name? Lee what? No one knows. You see, that's already a problem, right? No one knows. That tells you that the dynasty is diluting. And same with political family as it is with business family, right? The first generation, killer. Don't touch them. They'll screw you if you ever mess with them. But wealth, power, life, comfort soften each generation. So eventually, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 generations later, they're a former shell of themselves, right? And that's the case in politics as well as in business families. So I believe the current leader, Lee something, he's well educated, right? He's very eloquent. He's very smart, but he definitely doesn't have that charisma, the dominance that his father had. And I believe that he's in a tough situation now with power transition. Who does he give the power to once he retires? He was going to give to one minister. That's not part of his family. But, that guy turned out to be a loser. And you see that this is happening already. So when there's no clear leadership, there's going to be a point where there's no clear leadership in Singapore. Then the different classes that exist within Singapore will fight for money, power, privileges, that's going to happen. And how is Singapore going to survive that and go to the next stage? I don't know. Is there another family going to emerge as a dominant family and become the controlling power? And that usually is the case with Chinese managed countries, whether China, Taiwan, Hong Kong, everywhere, Asia in general. East Asia is managed that way, right? Because that's the culture here. Or it's going to turn into more like a compromise, like, I don't know. No, I really don't think it's going to come, because we're Asian, the culture is that way. It's hard to, your political system is a result of not just idealistic thought, but actually hard cultural limitations. Okay? So there's going to be a power struggle, and whether that new family or whoever is coming control is going to manage the country as well as the Lee family has been, we're not so clear of. So political dynasty transition, political transition. And this is the same risk that China faces, right? With each flip of generation, how is that leadership going to be? Because that leadership will have a lot of almost absolute power, and no one can say no till they get so overextended that revolution happens, dynasty change happens. You see the discontent already in Singapore. I think Singaporean knows this, but of course the discontented party doesn't have enough power to really challenging the dominant Lee family and their lackeys. That's a bad word, but their administrators will be a better word. Okay, that's one. Second, geopolitical. If you look around Singapore is a very small rock in the Pacific Ocean or Indian Ocean. I have no idea. It's a Pacific or Indian Ocean. Oh, excuse me, South China Sea. Even the name belongs to China. Okay, so if you look at Singapore, in the east, you got a very rapid rising power, Indonesia. In the north, you got two very rapid rising power, Vietnam and China. In the west, west is relatively safe. Malaysia and Thailand can't get their crap together, get their cacas together. So for the time being, they're no threat. Pause. Well, you might say, why would anyone invade Singapore? They're friendly to everyone. Well, they are friendly to everyone because that's what they needed to be survival when they're in such a precarious state of existence. Two is that look at where Singapore occupied. It occupies the port. It's basically a port of a small piece of ocean that is already the busiest and most valuable trade route in the world. On top of that, they have wonderful seaport, wonderful airport, wonderful banking institutions, wonderful, intelligent, educated population. They have so many valuable things that if I was an aspiring nation and want to be world power, I would love to keep that, or bring that into my portfolio as a possession, right? So if you're a powerful nation, whether you're China, Indonesia, or anyone who is on the up and up, you're like, I would love to own Singapore. Let's go back. But even Malaysia and Thailand can pose a very catastrophic threat to Singapore. Why? Singapore has military, right? It's stationed on the island, but as well as like in like countries like Australia, I heard Laos, Myanmar, where they rent land to house the military. Now, let's play the scenario out. Like, let's say that Malaysia or Indonesia decided to invade Singapore, just overrush it with military. Well, it doesn't take very much to occupy this little island. That's it. And as a Singaporean, you have nowhere to retreat to. You'll become an urban warfare. And your hope is that you can put up enough resistance so the reinforcement from Australia, from Laos, where all these places start flying in to help you. But even if they help you, what are you going to do? I mean, are you going to really bomb your own country? Are you really going to destroy your own country to stay independent? What is the cost of that versus, let's just say, capitulate to the new master? Also, if Indonesia and Malaysia get their, become so strong where they can build a strong navy, they can blockade, right? They can block the rescues from reaching the island. Whether the Air Force, ships, they can create a blockade in the air and the ocean where you can't reach. Now, right now, that's not an issue right now. But what about 50 years from now? Because Indonesia is getting their crap together very fast, barring any political upheavals, right? So, as a Singapore, it's like you're either eaten or be eaten. You're either eat or you be eaten, right? So if I was a leadership of Singapore, if I have any ambition, I would need to grab some territories very fast. Now that territory might not be Peninsula Malaysia, West Malaysia, but I would look to East Malaysia and say, you know what, guys, West Malaysians, they're screwing you for last 60 years, taking your resources for their own benefit. They have not done anything for East Malaysia. Why don't you let us manage you, be your manager? I will turn East Malaysia into what looks Singapore. And if Singapore has East Malaysia under its control, at least it has room to run, room to defend. If whether either from Malaysia, Thailand coming in to attack Singapore Island, or in the west, they can retreat to East Malaysia, or alternatively, if Indonesia comes start attacking Singapore, it has a front line. It can block them from East Malaysia, the island of Borneo. But the reason why China's empire never extended much beyond where Chinese live is because Chinese culture fundamentally is a civilized culture. It only grabs towards weapon military when it necessarily need to defend itself, not to attack other people. Whereas the Western society is very barbaric, hence barbarians. Even though they had technological advances, they're much more prone to attack you because they want something from you than attacking you because they have to defend themselves. And Singapore, being as like a Chinese, still Chinese, they're still Chinese. They're in here. The value system is still Chinese. I can't imagine a scenario where Singapore decides, you know what, let's occupy Borneo Island. Let's take control of Malaysia so that we can have safety. Because you need space. And because they can't do that, they don't have that aggression in them. They may very well one day disappear from the map, being annexed by countries such as, more most likely, Indonesia, but also potentially Malaysia and any of the other powers surrounding them. And in that case, maybe China say, Singapore, you're being attacked by Indonesians. Let me help you, defend you. And what's that's going to happen? Then basically, in Singapore falls under the control of China. And China would love to have a base in Singapore, very much in the same way that British loved Singapore as a base for their control of Southeast Asia. So you say, what the future for Singapore holds? I'm not very rosy about Singapore, I'll be honest with you. I'm not investing in Singapore. I'm not holding property in Singapore. One is because to me, it's like too expensive, too overpriced. I'd rather go invest in Indonesia than Singapore. And two is that, I'm sorry, it's just not, in the age of empires and large nations, a city-state is very hard to survive in this. It's so hard to navigate these turbulent waters to survive. Good luck to my Singaporean friends. Hope you you learn something. Love to hear your opinion because I'm sure you guys think about this stuff too. Let me learn something from your perspective too, okay? But please, no egotistical response like, we got wonderful jet fighters in Australia. Yeah, so does everybody knows that. Hence, it's useless. You got to have things that people don't know about. They can hit them back hard. Good luck.
Did you enjoy that video? If so, remember to subscribe to our channel so that YouTube will inform you when I do another video. Bye-bye.